So at 6 o'clock, we can call the meeting to order. I do know there's a couple of people that are going to be coming in a little bit late, but we'll get started. So for current roll call, we have Rick Alexander, Jeff Hance, Kate Lamphere, Lois Perla, Lisa Sanders on Zoom, myself, and right, looking, well, actually, for the additions and deletions, I just want to add in, I think I had mentioned that Jean DeWeese from the Policy Governance was going to pop in and have a little bit of a discussion with us, answer some questions, but I'm not entirely sure when she's going to drop in. So as long as you guys are okay with it, wherever we're at in the agenda, if we can just, you know, have her talk and then we can resume the agenda as is. I will just tentatively put that under old business. So if that's acceptable to everybody, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. All right, next, looking for an approval for the minutes from the September 19th meeting.
So moved. I'll second.
So that was Rick. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. So now we move into student reports.
The girls varsity game just finished up their game with Fells Falls. They won 3-0. Spirit Week has been going on this past week to show our school spirit. And today's team was green and gold, or for seniors, the senior shirts. We hosted a blood drive at the school with Red Cross. NHS assisted in it, and we raised 22 pints of blood for it. The boys varsity game has won 12 games so far and only lost one. It's been a really great season. And their senior game is tomorrow against Fells Falls as well. And they're really confident they're going to win that one. There's a New York City trip being organized next April. They're planning to visit Ellis Island, visit the Met, take a show on Broadway, and much more. And the trip is open to middle and high school students. Homecoming is going to be this Saturday at 7:30. The theme is going to be Starry Night. A lot of students have been really looking forward to this and are excited to, dance, and they're picking out music with playlist and everything. And snow sports forms are being handed out, and they're due November 1st, I believe. And there's a lot of excitement already for the ski season.
Excellent, thank you, Jack. Does anyone have any questions for Jack?
Thank you.
We'll move into administrators report. And then first.
So probably the biggest thing to talk about for a few minutes is the restructuring work that's been going on in terms of trying to find the best way to manage the over-enrollment at Chester Andover and the under-enrollment at Cavendish. We had actually a really good turnout for the open forum where we discussed kind of like the top three ideas that came out of the cabinet's work. And there was a lot of really good conversation there. Some good ideas came up in the meeting. And so we will be ready for the November board meeting as promised to present our recommendation. It will be modified from the three based upon some of the things that we heard. Part of that is I'll be putting Cheryl to work a little bit as much as we can to try to provide the costs for those. So I expect to be able to come in and do a slide presentation, kind of talk our way through it, the pros and the cons, and hopefully it's something that's going to be agreeable. Based upon what we heard that night, I think it will be, which is good. The other thing that's been going on a little bit behind the scenes is we've got a team that's been working on the evaluation process currently for teachers. We have engaged with the teachers union and we're going to do a pilot program this year. The process that we're developing is in a kind of a draft state right now. We're going to have a meeting on Friday, hopefully be able to wrap up the final pieces and start to get that pilot going. Once that is complete, we are going to go through all the staff categories in the district and revamp the evaluation system as much as possible with an eye towards goal-centered evaluations. so that they can support the work that we're doing in terms of equity and on the continuous improvement plan. And then probably the last thing to touch on tonight is the principal search at Cavendish. We did have a meeting with the interview committee last night. They've got some homework that they're working on, and hopefully Wednesday next week, when we get together, we're going to be able to have an interview schedule posted and hopefully start interviewing either next week or the week after. So it's moving pretty well. And that's it, unless there's questions. Oh, sorry about that.
The evaluation for the teachers are you making like a homegrown evaluation, or is this a standardized tool?
Homegrown, but based on the research base.
Okay.
And a lot of it is focused around goal setting and personal growth. In the old days, I think it's Danielson that's used here. RBT was used in Massachusetts, and it was a good system, but one of the failures of it is that as an observer, you would go into the classroom, and what you would look at is the teaching moves that the teacher was making. And there's a lot of research out there about, these moves are really good because they tend to have an impact and these moves aren't. And so what you try to do is reinforce those moves that are very good. The problem with the system is that a teacher can do all of those moves and still have no impact on kids, right? Because there's a matching piece that needs to go along as well. And so what we're doing a little bit with the evaluation system that we're working on, it's more goal oriented and it's more focused on impact and data measurement. This is my goal, this is how I'm going to measure it. I'm taking a look at my data as we're progressing through the year and adjusting as needed.
It sounds great. Is it customary for districts to do kind of a homegrown evaluation? Like, is it there's a balance? Well, some do the standardized, some do what they make.
It's, I think the standardized is the easier way to do it. But typically what you want to do, at least my opinion, what you want to do is you want to tailor the programs within your district and the structures that you have to support what your goals are. And so I think that this is one that can support those goals pretty well.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
So good question.
Thanks.
Any more questions for Lane? Lisa?
Okay.
Thanks. Are there going to be additional opportunities for input on the restructuring plan after there are potentially new plans?
Probably a little bit. I'm going to talk with the faculty at their listening sessions, but we did have a pretty good listening session. I'm just turning the volume up, so I apologize if I'm out of your view.
Yeah, that's
pretty
okay.
good listening session last week. And there was also, sounds like quite a few times that the board was getting together, having the discussions, connecting with the community. Part of the work that was there when we were looking at potential solutions was taking a look back at the survey that was out there and the other information, especially the comments that were on the survey more than the data itself. So I think we've got a pretty viable solution. There is a cost associated with it, but it will have no real impact in terms of, having to move kids around or busing or things like that, which should keep people happy. And we still plan on pursuing the preschool at Cavendish.
Okay. So when the forum was set up to be at Green Mountain, I think we also talked about potentially having one of those in Cavendish. Is that no longer part of the plan?
We can, if folks would like. But again, we kind of asked that night, and I think it was mostly Cavendish and Andover that was there. There wasn't much Chester representation. And one of the reasons I think that I want to keep under wraps a little bit what our plan is because I get a little fearful that if we release it too early, people are going to take it, hit social media, cause a big disruption and controversy. I think it's easier to bring it into the board. People will have an opportunity for public comment there, and then the board can make its decision. And if the board's not happy with it, they're quite able to vote no. But again, I've watched the controversy and I've kind of watched the conflict that's happened. And I'm trying to prevent that from happening again as much as I can. So if we go and have one at Cavendish, which we can, It won't be talking fully about what we're planning, pulling the pieces together from the open session that we had about a week or so ago. Yeah.
And just one more before we move on. If there are certain things board members would like to see in that presentation about the options or comparison of options, should we ask for those things directly from you or just ask them that night when you're presenting the options? What would be the best way to handle those questions?
Since most of the conflict, it looked like, happened at the board level, in previous incarnations of the work that was done on this, I do not think it's in the best interest to give it to the board prior to that night.
No, that's not quite what I'm asking. If board members have things they would like to see in the presentation, like I would be particularly interested in knowing that there was some sort of analysis on what the impact would be on academic performance, if there's any expected impact on that. So if there are things like that, pieces of information that board members would like to know about the plans from these experts who were part of formulating these plans, should we send those questions to you ahead of time or ask them the night of?
You can send them ahead of time. And that way, what I can do is I can add them to the slide deck for that night. Yeah, which I think is really good. One of the biggest things that we'll talk about is the idea that there is a cost that's associated with it. And there are 2 or 3 different kind of versions of the same plan with different costs. And I think it's going to be really important to kind of take a look at those and talk about, this one is really good for this. This one's really good for this. This one's really good for this. What is our objective? Where do we want to go? And so that'll be a lot of the discussion. But yeah, no, that's actually a very good point, Lisa. If folks have questions that they want to include, even though, it's kind of, you don't really know 100% of what's happening, that you might be concerned about, Adam, and if it's possible, I'll put them in the slide deck. Yeah, good question.
Steve, take your hands still up, Lisa.
In looking at the preschool environment at Cavendish, have you targeted the space?
Yes.
Are you planning on the 6th grade room as the space?
So, in having a conversation with some folks at Cavendish, there is an open space in the upper grade wing. The idea would be to take the highest grade in the lower grade wing, move it to that classroom. The space that's open would then become kindergarten, because kindergarten has been fairly small. And then the space that kindergarten is kind of like a double classroom size.
Yeah.
That would be the preschool. And the idea is that we really don't know what kind of enrollment that we might get. And so we'll start off small. We'll start off with the 2 staff members, which would get us up to be able to handle like 20 kids. And then at that point, we can evaluate over the year, is this viable? Are we getting enough to keep this running? Do we have a waiting list? Do we have to actually create more space? So I think next year will be a very telling year.
And do you have a plan for a suitable playground for preschool?
Yeah, it's got to be smaller. We talked a little bit, some of the ideas that the staff brought up about where it may be located and the idea that, it might be appropriate to put a fence around it as well. Yeah. So good questions. Yeah.
I know that restructuring is on the agenda for later. Should I hold my further
I was just going
questions?
to suggest if we could
Thank
move
you.
this into
Yeah.
the next section. Okay. All right. Any more questions about the report itself? All right, so we'll move into principal's report. I don't think we got them ahead of time unless I missed it. So I don't know if you guys want to.
Turned my head.
No. I think a couple of us were missing stuff. So happy to have you guys talk about it. If you're prepared. If not,
Yeah, I'll what I turned in. It's a pretty basic month. We talked about teacher goals. I have all my teachers setting their goals. This year we were really targeted with goals and connecting them to our building SIP plan, which of course is connected to the district SIP plan. So having all the teachers sort of evaluate what their piece of that puzzle is and setting their goal accordingly so that it's interwoven. We have our first evacuation drill coming up tomorrow. So if you see us marching down the street don't fear, we are simply practicing. That went out in our newsletter, so folks should know, but we'll also send out a school messenger in the morning to families so that they're not concerned when they see us wandering around town. DIPL's benchmarking data has been complete and is being used now to create groups for differentiation and enrichment with our literacy. Trunk or treat's coming up, so please donate candy. You can bring it to the office and leave it there, and we will make sure to pass it out to all our little paper kiddos. And then, actually, this is not my report, but the kids asked if they could dress up for Halloween this year. And we contemplated that and the disruption and some of the inequality of that sort of celebration. So what we're doing instead is the day after Halloween, which is a Friday, we're having a pajama day. So all those tired kiddos from trick-or-treating, parents can just pick them out of bed and put them in the car without getting them dressed. And we'll have pajama day, and we're having a fun little activity on our field at the end of the day for everyone to participate in, to make it special. But this way we sort of address that disparity. I skipped something. We're looking at one of our larger closets, turning it into an office. It actually will be a great extra space for us next year, but it's going to be a summer project. It's a little bit more involved than we had thought, but that's on the horizon. And then after school program is going strong. The garden, they just redid our garden. When Mr. Kelly retired, he used to take care of our garden, and he's not there to do that anymore. So the ASP program took it over, and they did a really great job getting our garden weeded and sort of back under control. That's sort of a glimpse at the good things going on at Chester Hanover.
How do I follow that? For me, one of my individual goals is to try and be more informative for the board and for our stakeholders as well. What I've added in is things like enrollment numbers and kids at RBTC and kids on plans. And another goal that I'm working on is improving our attendance. That's a personal drive by myself. I know I mentioned it last year, and I did follow it all year. We did end up with 90.3% average daily attendance. The average attendance so far is 93%. So we're hoping to keep it ahead of that. The daily attendance seems to be improving, or the lack thereof, kids that are out seems to be falling a little bit, which is good. I think some of that is possibly attributed to our addition of hybrid grading, because being in school matters. Everything the kids do matters. We have the fall play, which will be student directed. Homework equals job. Very short, but very interesting. Good to see. So come and watch that. That's not till November 15th, 16th. We had an open house, and this year we added our counseling department decided that we're going to feed everybody before they came, and they did a wonderful job with various hot dogs, drinks, snacks, cookies, etc. And we had about the same as usual turnout. Still nothing to really cheer about yet, but everyone's busy this time of the year. Parents are working different shifts and taking kids around doing games and traveling around southern Vermont. So yeah, I mean, I was happy with it. I think those who came had a good night, got a lot of information about the courses and the content the students were taking. We did mail out last Friday our Vermont Cup results from the spring. Again, small improvement, but we're continuing to grow in that and work towards our CERT goals for this year. We will be having most of our students, 9th and 11th graders, will be taking the PSATs and SATs on Tuesday, October 22nd. That's next week. Our Wellness Center continues to evolve. The Wellness Center that was part of our role in the grant that Jess Kessler has been working on all of last year and this year. We've opened it up. We're increasing time each day. Again, we haven't employed anybody else. We're finding ways to give kids a place to go to reset and refocus and chill and just relax for a certain amount of time. So more to follow on that. It's just going to continue to grow, hopefully. Mountain biking, again, I've got to take my hat off to the guys that are involved in this. They are so dedicated. You know, every day when you talk to them, you can feel the emotion about their mountain biking and what they do with kids. Every day. They had a large meet yesterday, and our kids did exceptionally well. I talked to Andy today when we were going through his pep goals, and he was telling me a little story of there was a young student who said he did a practice run in August, or the end of August, I believe, and he said, "No, I don't want to ride it today." And he said, "Well, what have you got to lose?" He said, "Okay, there's 100 people here, so what? Just go and ride it, do your best." "No, I don't think I want to do it." "Oh, come on, you can do it." So he got him out there, and the young man took 20 minutes off of his time when he last rode it, but he's like, "Yeah." And Andy was even, I think, happier than the student. It got him to do it, and he did so well. As Jack already said, we have a New York trip we're planning in April. It's open for everyone in the school to go. If it's anything like a BC trip of last year, it is phenomenal. And the more kids we get, hopefully the less the cost will be. And this weekend, we've got a busy weekend. On Friday night, it's not actually a homecoming dance. The middle school is having a Halloween dance. And then on Saturday, our high school is having a homecoming dance. So a couple of nights out for us this weekend. Oh boy, can't wait. And that's what I got. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question, not a question, but I heard there was an actual lockdown that went pretty flawless.
Yes.
I think that should be brought to everyone's attention.
Yes, we had word from our local public police department. They do a wonderful job, and like on the way here, they were letting us know. We did a full lockdown. We had full support from all our services that are available. Kids were phenomenal. Officers were phenomenal. Staff were phenomenal. Just in everything they did. You know, there were a few things that, like anywhere, anytime, you can always improve on. But they all did a great job. So yes,
Thank you.
So good.
Nice job.
perfect.
Thank you.
Sure.
I also have a comment, if that's okay. I just wanted to say I had the opportunity to tour with Brittany and Jess the wellness space and hear a little bit about what they're doing and what they're planning. And I just want to say it's awesome. And I'm really excited to see it unfold and continue to
It's growing.
progress. It's very innovative to allow for a space like that. And I'm hopeful that kids will use it. It's definitely needed. So
Excellent.
congratulations.
Thank you. And please, any other folks that want to come and have a look, let us know and we'll get you in and have a look. You know, it's your school as well as ours.
It's worth it. Yeah, it's worth seeing.
Definitely.
Any other questions? All right, we can move into the curriculum reports. I just want to give you a little warning, though, that she might jump in like right around 6:30, so
Yeah.
if she does, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I have my report for you. I do not actually have a presentation, but I'll give you kind of the gist of the report and then ask any questions and kind of give you an update on where I've been since the beginning of the month. So the overall report is focusing this month on math specifically. And as the past reports have, we are focusing on three things: what are students learning, how are students performing, and what are we doing to continuously improve, and always focusing on our SIP goals. And I apologize, I wasn't here last month. I had a presentation around our social emotional goal, our third goal. That is, you can still see on the website, so if you have any questions, please let me know about that. And this month, it's focusing on math. So really that the second goal around improving math teaching and learning for students. So this month, starting at the end of September, I've been working with a math coach to collect some data, looking at mathematical practices that are occurring in classrooms in order to tease out a goal to support, like, what are we going to focus on with our teachers during in-service days. So we, over the past month or so, have been collecting data on how questions that teachers are asking and also the questions that students are asking. Which is interesting is even, I was just at the Roland conference today with Jess Kessler and her team, and the whole focus was on democracy and really student discourse as really deepening student discourse and discussion in all content areas. And this is one of the change ideas articulated in our SIP around productive math discussions and being effective of pulling in all students' understanding and deepening that across student to student. So that's really the focus of the work that our grades 3 through 6 teachers are focused on for the coming year during in-service day. The other piece that I wanted to pull out to share with you is on October 8th, I attended a Southeast Region Listen and Learn tour that the AOE has been running throughout the state, actually. So they did it first with regional, and now they're actually running it again for the public to be invited to. And I actually placed in the shared folder on the TRSU website the overall Vermont report. We have just also finished our benchmark assessment on October 4th for reading and math. And the extension for kindergarten was through this Friday. So in November, I'll report on the data from our benchmark to see how we're performing, also, as well as some of the data that the state has extracted for TRSU specifically. So you can see kind of how the AOE is reporting out of Vermont this month, and then I'll share out TRSU and our local data during that time. Any questions? And if there's the other comment or question I have for the board is since there's like a shift in role, if there's anything that I'm not reporting on that you would like me to report on, please let me know. I certainly want your feedback and want to get the information that you're asking for.
Thank you. All right, so Jean has logged on. So I will. Hi, Jean. Can you hear
Hello?
us?
Yes. Hi. I had to figure out how to unmute myself. You would think after COVID, we all know how to do that, but still can test you. Do you want me to jump in, Adrian?
Yep, we are. We paused right in time.
Okay. So thank you for having me join you. I'm actually joining you from Nashville, Indiana tonight. I have been visiting my mother this week and have just joined up with some high school friends here. So I appreciate that you're accommodating my virtual attendance. And I just wanted to, I know that not everybody was present at the recent Policy Governance 101 training that we did. Some of you were at the summer retreat where we talked about it. So I thought I'd just give a couple of opening comments about policy governance and see if there are some other questions that I could answer for you, as I know you're considering moving forward in this arena. When I thought about what to say to you, I thought about why policy governance. So for those of you who don't know me, I am a recently retired superintendent, Vermont superintendent. I was superintendent in both Burlington and the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union. So I was superintendent for 17 years in Vermont, as well as a special ed director and teacher. And in Rutland Northeast, we adopted policy governance while I was there. And I would say that it changed my superintendency and my leadership style. It changed my relationship with my boards. I had 3 boards at Rutland Northeast. And I would probably sum it up in 3 words, that there was greater clarity, greater accountability, and greater results under a policy governance model over a traditional governance model. So that's why in my retirement and wanting to give back to Vermont education field, I am working with Vermont School Board Association to introduce policy governance to boards that are interested in it. Might not be for everybody, but I think it is something to explore if you're interested in clarity, accountability, and results. What I have learned is it really leads to a more informed and more efficient school board who focuses on setting the goals, basically telling me what my job is, which honestly traditional governance doesn't actually do. and then monitors and holds me accountable for those goals, and puts me in charge of the operations, which is what, as superintendent, they were paying me to do, while the school board focused on both holding me accountable, but also connecting. Large part of their job was connecting with your community, whether your community is taxpayers, teachers, students, because your connection with your community is how you as the board knows the direction that you want the schools to go. As a staff member, I found it also gave my staff greater flexibility in the way they were, and greater confidence in the ability to carry out their jobs, because they knew that they were charged with doing so. And the board was very clear about the parameters within which they had to do their jobs, and then expected results from that, as opposed to when you're serving a board of 5, 7, 14. I think when I started in RNESU, I had a 25-member supervisory union board, as opposed to 25 different people who have 25 different thoughts of how things should be done. It's very clear the board speaks as a whole. And it's a system of checks and balances. Policy governance is actually a framework of 10 principles that we went over in PG 101, that within those principles, if they're done as an entire group, it creates a forward momentum, and the things that I just said, the clarity, accountability, and the results for your community, so that when you are standing up and saying it's budget time, you're giving very clear results, because everybody knows what those results are supposed to be. Adrian had asked if there were any questions, and there were a couple that came my way, and I thought I'd just address those right off and then see what else comes up for you. Some feel that, or fear, without understanding what policy governance is or how it actually works, they feel that there's a loss of control on the part of the board. What we found in Rutland Northeast is that actually gives the board greater control, because you are going to write policies that define how you want things done and identifies what reports you want to get back, so that you can have greater confidence that things are actually happening in the district. In traditional governance, it's very common for the board to step into the operations, which often leads to miscommunication, frustration, staff turnover. Whereas in policy governance, the board sets the direction, tells the CEO or the superintendent the parameters within which to work, and then you receive reports, or you don't have to just receive reports from your superintendent. You may choose to do a direct inspection report or an external audit report to get the information that you need. The authority, or the power as some call it, is maximized for both the board and the superintendent, because it's very clear that the board gives the superintendent marching orders. The superintendent then gives the staff the marching orders. The superintendent is accountable to the board for what the staff does. The board is very clear on what they want to be accountable for. So it actually, that role clarity actually increases options to move within each lane. A primary responsibility of the board, as I said earlier, is to be connected to your taxpayers. Your taxpayers elected you, your residents, your taxpayers, your staff, your students are looking to you for direction. And within the framework of policy governance, we actually create a year-long calendar that ensures that you are out, not just what you're doing tonight at a board meeting where a public might come and speak to you, but you are actually out soliciting ideas and input and feedback from the public throughout the year, and check in on the direction that you're going. One question that came my way is, how is the conflict between superintendent and board handled in policy governance? Actually, that's very similar to traditional governance, except with the added benefit that when conflict occurs, often in traditional governance, there's this mushy feeling of, is everybody really on the same page of what the superintendent is supposed to be doing? Whereas in policy governance, you have laid it out in policy. And so it's actually easier to deal with the conflict because it's there, it's in writing, and it's clear to the superintendent, who doesn't have to guess what 15 people are thinking. And it's clear to the board if you aren't getting the results that you want to get. So it's actually, conflict can occur anytime, but it's there's a system in place that allows you to address the conflict very directly. Transparency was another question that came forward. This person asked the question about how does transparency work if the board is just discussing policy and metrics? Well, actually, I find that what I did as superintendent was much, much more transparent because I had to give these reports to the board and they were in writing and the community saw them and the board understood more of what was happening on the operations side than they ever did under traditional governance because I just didn't discuss those topics. They just weren't on the agenda. Now they will be. Again, you are setting the policy parameters. You are determining when you're getting reports and you can ask for additional reports if you need to. You are looking at data and metrics, but you're looking at them within the direction that you have set, that your community has said, this is important to us. And so you're actually having very transparent conversations that the community can be part of in areas that are predefined and clear, and people want to hear how you're doing. So that's kind of a brief overview. We spent 6 hours in September kind of going over the framework and the 10 different principles, and that's not what I'm doing here tonight. There is an opportunity as your board is delving into this further. I think Adrian will talk about it, but there's an opportunity for you to take some online training at your leisure, at your home. There's 8 different modules that you can take to bring everybody to the same place of understanding. And then I will continue to work with the board. I think our next step, should we move forward with that, is creating the policies itself. And when you actually create the policies, you'll get an even better sense of how it all ties together. There's policies. There's the ends policies, which you might refer to as vision, mission now. There's executive limitations policies, which tells your superintendent the parameters within which they have to do their job. There's a superintendent board management relationship policy that talks about that relationship between the board and the superintendent. And then the board also creates its own policies on how you're going to do your own work, setting agendas, et cetera, connecting with the community. That's all part of the policies that you create as well. I don't know if I've touched upon any questions somebody has already. I don't know if that's too brief an overview, but I'll just be quiet and see if anyone has any questions for me or wants more information.
Questions that were sent in answered sufficiently. Lisa, was your question that you had answered? Yep. You're on mute.
I'll ask it again because I do think it's relevant beyond just the smaller conversation we had, which is that within the supervisory union and then having 2 school districts within that, can you speak a little bit about how policy governance works across all 3, especially since each of the 3 boards would need to adopt policy governance for themselves?
Yes.
How that might coordinate. Thank you.
Yes, so I experienced that at Rutland Northeast. We had the Barstow Unified School District and we had the Otter Valley Unified School District, and then we had the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union. So it's similar to your makeup right now. Barstow was forging way ahead. They were, I had some board members with experience. They're the ones who brought it to the board. They're the ones who sent some board members and me down to Miriam Carver to get trained in Atlanta. Lane actually brought Miriam up to his district a year or so later. And so they were forging ahead, but the other 2 districts were kind of, what are you even talking about? I'm not sure if this is for us. So we ultimately decided to forge ahead, and Barstow created their ends policy, and we created their policy manual. The policy governance policies have a general template that you can follow and then adjust for your particular circumstances. So they did that work, and I started making reports to them. The SU board was the next one to actually jump on board. And their ends policy, again, that's your vision mission, was different from Barstow in the sense that Barstow was serving students pre-K to 6. They were actually whereas the SU serves the district. Not as much the kids. The purpose of an SU is to provide all those administrative services so that the schools can provide services to the kids. So their ends were a little bit different that way. And but the policies were very similar in many cases. And when I would write a report, I could write a report addressing both of theirs in the same report. So one thing we did is line up our calendar of reports. Otter Valley was the last one to jump on board. It was my largest board. It had 14 board members. And they also set their own ends policy, and they were a pre-K-12 district, whereas Barstow is a pre-K-8. So their ends look different. Ends look different in 8th grade than they look in 12th grade, for example, where you want to get the kids to. So their ends did look different. And yet there's an awful lot that's similar. We know we want our kids to be well educated. We know that core academics are important. There are a lot of things right now. Civics is really important. There are just a lot of things that are very similar, but it's written with that community. And then again, as I was doing the reports, some of the executive limitations policies, for example, that the superintendent is in charge of have to do with finances, how you're building a budget, how you're protecting the assets, the buildings, how you're doing long-term visioning of your budget. Those didn't really differ across the 3 districts. So those reports, this is how we do it at the central office, because the central office was in charge of finance, but I reported out to each of those districts. So overall, it can work, even if not all 3 districts sign on at the same time. What it did do is, because it was working at Barstow before Otter Valley signed on, I had gained a great deal of clarity just from the Barstow conversations. And this was after 12 years of being a superintendent elsewhere. It was like, oh, that's what my job is. I mean, it really provided a great deal of, I'm not just responding to what's in front of me, but there is truly a relationship, a chain of command relationship that occurs between the board and the superintendent and the staff. And I'm accountable for that. So it's beneficial, even if you have a district not signing on.
Any other questions, discussions, thoughts? And Lee, did you look into the online education? Okay. When do you think that would be available for people?
It's available now.
It is.
Yeah, I think Kelly had actually sent out an email to the folks that didn't participate in the in person. So we can do that again. That's the accelerator. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so email regarding,
I'll get that out with her tomorrow.
okay. Jean, is there anything else that you think that we should be looking at, thinking about at this time, as we're kind of like starting to delve into more of the process and understanding?
I think the most important things are is as many of you could go through that initial training as possible, so that there's a language to policy governance. There's always a language to everything in education, right? And there's just an understanding of concepts. And then if I meet with you in November, I had given Adrian a possible timeline of moving forward, then I think delving into the policies itself on top of the training is really going to give you a much more robust understanding of how it works.
And the proposed timeline is page 2 of that cheat sheet that everyone got. And Lisa, since you're not here, I'll just mail it to you. It's just a 2-page cheat sheet and a proposed timeline. So, okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thoughts, discussions, if you do come up with a question though, that after you've read this or you start having,
Yes.
Just you can either email me directly or myself or Lane, and we can forward it on. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Jean. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you again for accommodating me.
Have a good visit. Okay, so just real quick before we move on, did anyone have any questions about curriculum, since we kind of just jumped right into Jean from that? All right, so then I guess we will move on now to our Chief Facilities Director's report.
Staying on this side, and so I'll come back to people. I'll start with a little bit of bad news for people who don't know. We lost Jerry Sporta, bus driver. Jerry, I hired Jerry the first year I was here. Great guy. Started out as somebody who wanted to help his daughter with some field trips and ended up taking some sport trips for us. And then he was a regular bus driver and turned into the bus driver for Cavendish. And just a good guy and a horrible loss for us. So prayers for his family. I spoke with Amy and they're going to try to do something up here. So try to keep an eye out on social media if anybody wants to attend. I'm sure the family would be appreciative of that. So bad news there. Back, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, we had an invitation. Springfield did a facilities upgrade in their cafeteria at the high school. And Cheryl and I were invited to go. I ended up running into Tuck was there. EEI did the project, wanted to go and see firsthand of a major project that they had worked on. And if you didn't get to see it, and Tuck can vouch for me, it was spectacular.
I will vouch.
The work that was done there, we talked to their person who was Cheryl, who raved about the work that was done, how it was done. I did learn some things about, it was almost a $700,000 project, and the taxpayers paid for 10% of it because the after-school program picked up the majority of the tab, almost 70% of it. So some really neat things that, when we talk about LED lighting, when we walked in, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. We're looking at the floors all look nice and, it's fresh paint, and they're gonna have a drop-down TV instead of a screen's gonna come out of the ceiling, and they're gonna have some gaming and stuff on it. But the lighting was soundproof lighting. When the lighting comes down and the boards are soundproof to dampening the echo in the room. So it was well thought out and kind of a neat project. So thought I'd share that. Cavendish, no major issues right now. I talked to Tony. Tony seems like things are going along pretty well up there, so nothing major to report in Cavendish right now. Chester Andover, we have another new liaison for FEMA, so we're working with them again. It didn't seem to go backwards this time, just made a kind of a lateral move because the fifth one that we've had was only there for about 2 weeks, and we ended up with another one, so.
Like the second one.
Lane had asked for some secondary pricing for a modular for that school. Fortunately, we'd already done all that work. So had all that put together, except for how much it would cost to get it all set up. Power, ADA, life safety, and contacted Eric. He's gonna talk, and this isn't about, praising them, but they put together everything we needed for a budgetary number. So EI took care of that. That was submitted to Wayne. We will have all that to present at some point. At GM, we have Harper's put together an ECA, which is an evaluation of corrective action alternatives for our PCBs. They're working on that with the state. I'm going to try to get the DEC to come in and report to you in November. So you will have a direct response from the state. There's probably more to talk about with PCBs, but it's speculation, and I don't, like I told you the last time, I don't want to speculate. I have some ideas and I've heard some things from our environmentalists, but it's nothing that the state is saying that they're going to do. So I don't really feel comfortable, saying anything about that. I do have some good and bad news with our boiler. I reported last month that we were waiting for the core to come. It's going to be 23 weeks. It's here. They split the boiler yesterday with some thanks to Rick and Jackson Gore. Got some barrels from him. He helps out with us with that whenever we need them. Found a couple other issues in there. It's going to be a little bit more money than what I thought it was. Made an executive decision today that we're going to go ahead and fix that. I really think I'd like to put the bug in your ear now. We did a boiler project at Mount Holly that is up and running after watching how that went in and how that boiler runs. That's just gonna be exceptional. That thing might pay for itself before they get done paying for it. It'll pay for itself. It did. I walked in the other day, it was 35 degrees and the boiler's only running at 10%. That's all it needed to run. Where any of our boilers right now, when they turn on, they would run on high fire or low fire. So you're burning this fuel, any one of our boilers, even the new ones at Chester and Dover, run the same way. So, pretty impressive. The new propane boilers are how smart they are. Our compressor wasn't supposed to be here until November 11th. Putting that in on Monday. That came in, so our supply chain seems to be picking up. And that's gonna be on budget. CPI is taking care of that. I want to double back to a little bit what John said about our incident here at school. We take these like shortly, I guess can be interpreted different ways. Shortly after, for me and some of the other administrators, it was determined that this was not a real threat. But we followed through with it as it was. And when I say we, I mean our local police department. We are following their lead when it goes. What I believe, and Kate can attest to this, is that when it was done, you meet with a debriefing for all the parties, EMS and police and fire and Springfield had sent some people over, and you all meet in the room, and it's always good because there's always room for improvement on our EOBs. Right? So we all met, there's some things that we need to do that hadn't been done. There's some things that we were doing that could be done a little bit better, but it's never good to have to go through that, but you take away something good from it. And I think that's what it is that we take away where we can always be better at some of those things. And that's about all I have. Anybody got any questions? Steve?
Any update on the fire doors?
So that's coming the end of this month, right from the get-go. They had talked about the end of October when that firm would have, Banwell would have all that put together. I did talk to them shortly after the last meeting, and she stuck with that it'd be the end of October, and which would still give us plenty of time for me to present it to you. I'm pretty much going to present to you a dollar amount, and we're going to say, yes, we have to do this, and then we move in a direction of getting it out to bid. So, yeah, should come at the end of October. Yep.
Going back to the lockdown, I understand, the police have to check every closet, every door.
Yep.
You handed them 165 keys on a ring.
Yeah.
What was the cost a few years ago to have the whole school record? We should look into that again because they should only be 3 keys.
I want to say a number, Jeff, and please don't quote me on this, but I want to say it was somewhere around 70,000.
Oh, 70, okay.
Yeah, somewhere around 70,000 to get the building rekeyed. So what I have done, I'm not going to say. So there's some things that we're working on. I don't feel that we should be saying anything about safety and security in an open conversation. But we're going to work on a few things that are going to be quite that expensive. It's not going to eliminate, those 100 and some odd keys I carry around. It's not immediately, not unless we rekey the whole building, but we're going to do some things to try to alleviate that problem.
Actually, I commend you because we had the conversation right after
We did.
about the courts.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a couple of things there. That was one of the things that came up in our debriefing. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, moving to financial update.
Do you want EEI to go first?
That's fine.
Yeah, so Eric Lafayette.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll just share my screen here. Somebody enable me.
You are.
Let me see. Should be working now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Lafayette from Burlington, Vermont, which is cool getting to see Jean Collins come on. She was actually my superintendent at BHS. Went to Roger Williams University, studied construction management. I live in South Burlington now as part of the Vermont School Construction Aid Task Force last year. And I've been working at Springfield High School, Vermont Academy, and in this district for the last few years. And I've been developing projects around this area for about the last 15 years with another organization as well. Who is EEI? We're an energy service company. I don't want to get too far into it because I know you guys had a presentation recently on it. We're based out of Merrimack, New Hampshire. That's our home office. We have an office in Williston, Vermont. We're up to about 20 employees now in the state of Vermont. And I brought one of our employees, it's Logan over here. This is his civic lesson for today. He graduated from Springfield this past year. He was part of the tech center program over there. Started working with us on a summer project over there and just stayed with us right through. So it's worked out really well. But we focus on energy efficiency, sustainability, and we've been really working with this district starting in 2019. And we also work with some of the RVTC local students. We have another job coming up at Vermont Academy. We're actually there right now. And we're discussing on bringing a few of their kids on this coming spring as well. Our process, so what we try to do and what we did in this school back in 2019 is we identified a bunch of options for the school that they can do upgrades at. We provide this a la carte kind of shopping list where they can go through and pick kind of what school upgrades they're looking for. So we're usually looking at ventilation improvements, LED lighting, control upgrades, boilers, really anything that has energy efficiency associated with it. Here, obviously, the windows were tied into kind of the HVAC system, and then the doors and life safety and code issues as well. So we spent back in 2019, we actually won this project in like October of that timeline, and then COVID hit right at the beginning of 2020, and it was kind of like a year of like stalled, nobody really going out any places. And then we came back kind of in 2022 and we started presenting some different options with you guys. And at that time, we had done a full audit on the building. We brought architects and engineers as well. And we were really kind of in that design process at that stage. Really, we were working with Banwell Architects. There's a local engineering services of Vermont, was the electrical engineer. We went through and did full audits of here, Chester, Andover, and Cavendish. And we really tried to look at all the different options. So it wasn't just energy efficiency, but we were looking at code issues at the schools as well, and then programming needs. So there were space issues at Chester, Andover at that time as well. We had talked about options of eliminating kind of that outbuilding that ultimately ended up flooding, getting taken away with the river. So we spent a lot of time really kind of developing a lot of different scenarios and working with the board to try to, I think, structure something that they really wanted to be kind of this 30-year bond project that was really addressing a lot of different issues in the district. We try to provide the options because what ends up happening a lot of times is we'll present something maybe based on the direction of somebody at the school. Say like an oil-fired boiler replacement with a gas-fired boiler replacement. And what we don't usually want to do is get to like that last minute and have somebody be like, hey, did you think about geothermal? Did you think about any type of other biomass system? So we try to provide all those options up front and kind of work with our boards and our school districts through that process to select what best fits their needs. So I kind of call that the leave no stone unturned. To the extent that we even had kind of designs at Chester Andover to add a true gymnasium, make this a true cafeteria at one point. They talked about, relocating the classrooms in the back over and extending this corridor down through here, and then really reworking kind of that front administration area to make it a more secured entrance. So this is just kind of one example of some of the preliminary design work that we looked at throughout the whole district. And we really went to the point that we have, pricing set of drawings. We have almost full design on the mechanical systems. We went through, provided that a la carte pricing to the board, and ended up kind of with this A, B, C, or D option. The A, B, C, and D options were kind of a mix of addressing code issues, energy efficiency, end of life, And then also some occupant comfort and just overall experience. So there was talks of like adding an outdoor classroom at one point. And then just like other upgrades, which ended up swelling up a bond of, I think, plus $20 million roughly. But we're not always committed to doing projects like that. We try to put the options out, work with the board, and try to come up with options that work in their best interest. At Mill River, we did a cost neutral project where we added a biomass plant, upgraded their steam traps, and did new controls. And that's a project where we've actually met our energy savings on a yearly basis. And that biomass plant is actually paying for the upgrades of the school. And those were discussions that we had here as well. And like I said, ultimately, we did get to this point where we had pricing set drawings, and we did start working with subcontractors in the area to get better and more reliable pricing as well. Ultimately, we showed an ECM matrix similar to this, and this was specific to the high school. I did update the spreadsheet so you can kind of bring stuff in and out of it if you check it on and off. Ultimately, I think we ended up around 21 million, I think was the total bond amount at the time. And it included a lot of stuff like addressing the windows here at the school, redoing all of the ceilings, replacing pretty much the cabinetry throughout the space, doing all the doors. It was a really encompassing project at the end of the day. Ultimately, it got brought in front of the voters and it failed, as you guys would well know. And then it took a couple years, and now I'm back here today. But to the extent of showing where we're at on the drawings and just the design, this is a code review that was done by Banwell about 3 years ago. And actually, a lot of like the door stuff that you guys are going through now is stuff that was brought up at that time. Just ultimately wasn't acted on. So I also have a lot of great historical information here. We have reports from Banwell architects at each one of the schools. This is 35 pages of drawings that Banwell developed that talked about bathroom renovation, floor replacement, adding a lift to the auditorium stage. It was a really comprehensive look at it. And the nice thing is that's good historical information. The data saved here. It's all already made into the drawings. We had piping reviews and piping drawings of the whole new HVAC system. We looked at helping out on the PCB remediation with your window replacement because we already had a lot of that historical information when we were looking at pricing this back then. So we worked with John Turner Consulting to give them budgets for that type of work. And like I said, it's a lot of code assessments. And then over the years, we've done some improvements to the space as well. To the school as those ESSER funds came in, and then obviously helping with the boiler project at Mount Holly. So at this time, we are doing a project at Shepherdson Hall at Vermont Academy. We're in the process of doing a whole new boiler system throughout their whole campus. That's about 15 minutes away from here. So getting rid of their central steam system and going with distributed hydronic. We do have more work at Springfield High School, including replacing, I think, 8 storefront windows at their school next summer as well. That's probably about the 15th project that we've done with them. And that's a lot of stepped approaches. They had a failed bond vote prior to your guys' failed bond vote. And they've been really creative in the way that they've tackled their projects since then. Like you mentioned, utilizing school lunch funds, utilizing ESSER funds, and then utilizing some other funds that they came into through grants. And we were able to get a lot of these different, they got a new lighting system and sound system in the auditorium. Not really, we weren't part of that, but a lot of upgrades that they were able to do through creative financing with a lot of that information coming from kind of that baseline bond vote that ultimately failed. So at this time, we were selected as the ESCO a few years ago. I know it's been 2 years since we presented. We're doing a ton of work in the region. We're definitely ready to go if you guys wanted to continue speaking with us and take the next steps. I would love to give you guys a tour of Springfield High School and see some of the work that we've done there. The air improvement, the lighting improvement, it's made huge differences. And we're definitely committed to the region, continuing to grow our workforce in this area. So that's about it. I would love to, happy to sit down and share any information that I may have on the school. Really appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Very
very
much.
When are you down here? Like if we want to maybe potentially schedule like a board group, so like you're not having to like, meet one person at a time to do a tour, is there?
I'm down here every Thursday at least, and then I'm usually down here Monday afternoons as well.
Mondays and Thursdays.
So I do have people here. I mean, we have personnel on site at Springfield for probably the next 3 weeks, pretty much full time. We're gonna be at Vermont Academy indefinitely. Until I get that heating system up and running, but yes, we're there. So I'll be here at least twice a week. But I can come down really at any time, so.
Okay, all right. Maybe we can come up with a group visit, or at least a couple people could buddy up, so they don't have to do individual tours.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, September financial is in the folder, and the first quarter of this school year, which is crazy that we've got that fast. Everything's in alignment where I would expect it to be. There's no big red flags that I see as far as the financial goes. Something that is coming, as I was looking at Ludlow, Mount Holly's tuition, there's only 36 kids coming to Green Mountain this year, which is 20 less than what we had budgeted for. Some of that has to do with the kids that had left, but also what we anticipated, the students that we anticipated to come here didn't end up coming this year. That's about $360,000 of revenue loss with that. I've already started to work on the budgets. I did all the staffing today, but I will meet with each of the principals and we'll discuss that further. It's just my base that's in there. I went last week to a business manager and superintendent meeting about budgeting. We had a big discussion with Megan Roy, who is the chair of the Future of Education Committee. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. And so she was looking to get our feedback as people that actually have to work with the rules that they make. And so that was an interesting conversation, and hopefully we gave good feedback. From what I understand, it's similar to what was done at, I think Emma said at her, yeah. So it's the same things are coming out of the conversation, and so hopefully that they'll be listened to. And the Pincus report, did you read that at all?
A little bit.
Yeah. You read that?
138 pages.
Yeah, I haven't read all of it. I've just seen that comment. And so that was the commission that was done on the state of education in Vermont and the president of it. And was $400 million.
Yes.
They see that we can cut out, and they're not even talking about, that's not even talking about like small schools.
That's probably just the staff.
Yeah. So hopefully the legislative session will not be as chaotic, changing as it was last year. What we shall see. So I'm working on the service plan, which is my first step on budgeting. That's a special ed expectation for FY26. And so that is due by November 16th, but my hope is to have it done by the end of the month so that in November we can present the first round of budgeting.
All right, and I don't know if anyone saw it in the packets, there's kind of a budget timeline so that everyone can, have an idea of what's to be expected. And if you have questions as we're going along, direct them to Cheryl, so that we're, I think, hopefully gonna enter into the budget discussions and actions a little more informed and cohesively to share. Okay, any other questions for Cheryl?
When you met with your colleagues, can you talk about construction on state buildings or PCB remediation?
Well, we didn't talk about PCBs. I did talk to the superintendent from North Country because they're in the same boat. They were intense, but they were able actually to get back into the school now. So that was really only PCB. Construction, the only comment I heard about construction, it was, yes, we need more construction aid, but at a better rate than a 70-30 split. So it's there.
All right, any other questions for Cheryl?
Thank you.
Is there something?
I just said thank you, sorry.
Okay, so we'll move into committee reports. First for the RBTC.
Okay, so, the enrollment is up 14 students from last year. Right now, there's a $1,300 surplus expected in a tight budget year. That's pretty good. That was really the most, significant information that came out of this meeting, except for the fact that Scott Farr announced his retirement. So he'll be leaving in June. We'll be starting a search committee for his replacement. I was wondering if someone would volunteer to go to the RBTC meeting in November because I'm going to be away. So if somebody wouldn't mind, it's the first Wednesday in November, so that would be November 6th.
What time? What time?
Starts at 4:30 and it's usually over by 6.
I can do that. I will be in Springfield.
That would be fabulous.
Would I be, do you vote? Would I be just standing in to bring back a report?
I think it's really just, I'll check that out and I will let you know. I just realized that I wouldn't be there and I thought that it would be nice if somebody represented us. The other piece of this is that I've been doing this since I've been on the board, and I was anticipating that I would like to not do this after in March when we do reorganization. I would like somebody to take my place. So I thought this might be a good way to just.
I'm just covering.
No, I understand that.
So nice sneaking it in
Well,
there.
no, I just figured I'd give you some time before I tell you that I do not want to do this anymore. I mean, it really is a lovely board to be on. The meetings are very, it's great. I've just been doing it for a long time. That's all. Okay.
We appreciate it.
That's my report.
All right, for the TRSU board, again, as usual, we had all of the same reports that you've received today. We again had a discussion at the TRSU level about policy governance and potentially adopting it. And the only other new information is Jen Harper notified Lane and myself of the Two Rivers Southeast Education Association and the Love of Mount Holly Education Association. They gave us their intent to negotiate a successor agreement. So that will be Lois and Lisa that will be sitting in on that committee for teacher bargaining.
What is a successor agreement? Just the bargaining contract. Wasn't sure if it was something different, but there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and again, the rest of it was, Lane presented his report and Cheryl gave us the budget, so there wasn't a tremendous amount of difference. Transportation, I don't think met, did they? They haven't met. And then outreach met?
Yes.
Put out.
Outreach, we met. The outreach committee meetings are very fun. If anybody wants to join, they're a good time. We got out our first Hot Topics school board bulletin. There's a couple of little hiccups on the rollout, but we got through it. I misspelled Lane's name and I feel really bad about that still. So I'll do better in the future, but I corrected it before it went out, so that's all good. So we'll be meeting on Tuesday to draft this month's board bulletin, hoping to get that out to everyone. Adrian, I was hoping to have a conversation with you about the approval process.
So I wanted to kind of figure out, and I think it's more of a board
Okay,
decision.
sure,
I don't
yeah.
want to independently make that decision, but just having like some sort of oversight so that, you know, should somebody have issue with it, it doesn't directly go back on, you know, one or two people, but also just making sure that it is as you know, neutral message and it's what we want getting out. So I don't know if you want to take on the, you know, like going to you or, you know, I don't feel comfortable with it being one individual person on the board making the decision that it's okay.
If it's all right, my take just off the top of my head is if it's just kind of telling information about the district, any of that's probably perfectly fine. If it's about, you know, things that the board might be working on and having to make decisions about, I would say those are things that maybe, you know, would be up for the board to have a conversation about. Especially maybe taking a look at what was written just to make sure that it's neutral.
I just want to try and figure out a expedient process.
Yeah.
Because like if, you know, they're gonna meet next week to put it together. I don't want them to have to wait until the following board meeting for approval. So like something.
If the board is comfortable with us kind of making the decision together, then I'm happy to be a part of that.
Does that work? So maybe a
Works.
decision between our outreach committee and Lake?
Yeah.
Does that work?
That works for
everybody?
everyone else. It
Yeah.
worked perfectly this month, so
Yeah.
I think that would work.
Yeah.
And yeah, so everyone on the board knows that the goal is to be, you know, super neutral and just inform the community about the good things going on here and what we might be talking about next.
Perfect. And then the only other thing was, initially, they had looked at possibly having the Telegraph put it out, but there's, I believe, a charge. It's not like an automatic, it's just because they're a paper record. And then they required a editable PDF, which I don't think is necessarily a good idea for us to be doing that. So I think we'll just maintain the avenues of communication that we have going now, as long as it's okay with that.
So it goes out in the school newsletters and it's posted to Facebook, and we're not commenting or replying to that post, it's just out there as information. So only other outreach thing, we were asked to consider some ways to improve the website, so we did, or websites. So we chatted about that a little bit and figured the best next step would be sending out a survey to the community and just kind of getting a sense of what do you go to those websites to find? Is it easy to find? Is there anything that you would suggest to improve? And then we can kind of take that information and figure out how we might give suggestions to Julie about ways it could be better. That'll be next month's work.
Excellent. Thank you for taking that on.
Yep. Thank you guys.
Any questions about any of the?
It's not an outreach thing. I want to go back to transportation for just a second.
Okay.
Very sorry to hear about Jerry. We have real need for bus drivers, and we talked about that training program, which I thought was an excellent idea. What do we do with the bus driver?
So the longer term piece is that it's going to have to be something that's in the budget for next year if the board approves of it. And that's the idea of bringing in one or two additional bus drivers so that we can work a sub into the rotation so that there's always somebody available. The other idea that we had kind of talked about, which was quite successful in a few of the other districts, and there's not many that still have their own fleets, was maybe paying to have somebody go off and get the training, who is on our transportation staff, who then can be a trainer so that anybody off the street who has an interest in being a bus driver and working with us, we can train them right then and there, get them ready to go off and take their driving test, have them be successful, and then, you know, we've got our bus drivers. And the other thing that we could do as a possibility to generate a little revenue, if there is a need in the area for other districts to train. I'll ask. I'll run it by Pietro, but yeah, it's worth.
Phil Small has somebody when we asked.
Yeah, I wonder if it was their level of their certification or.
Some training programs will not allow you to train outside of your
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
so maybe in your review of training programs, find one that does let you.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. But I'll bounce that off, Pietro.
Lane, I did a little research on that too. Whoever does the training has to have 2 years of actual training.
For the CDL or for the bus portion? Yeah, the bus portion we usually send out for currently. Todd could probably speak a little bit more to that, but the CDL is usually the bigger one and the more time consuming.
CDL right down here in Rockingham. Class B is about $5,500.
Yeah. And we just had somebody go off and get the bus certification because they had the CDL.
She already had a CDL. It's a little different when you just want the passenger endorsement and the school bus endorsement. You have to pass the pre-trip inspection again. That's different than, John Doe walking in off the street with no commercial driver's license at all. Then you're talking, it's a major project, and I'm not sure we can, as a district or supervisor, you can go that route. You're talking about a driving school then.
No, we used to, like I said, we had a trainer at OSSD, and we used to take them from scratch. We would do the CDL portion there. It took a while. It's not a short process. But the benefit of it was that the folks were loyal afterwards. They were very appreciative to be able to get the training. But it's one of the things as we get into the budget season that we'll do the proper research on, and we'll present it to the board when it's possible at that time. So that'll probably be the November board meeting.
A good one to talk to, I can give you his number. It's Todd West down here in Rockingham.
Gotcha.
I'll give you his number after this.
West or West?
West.
There's nothing else on any of the boards. We'll move into the first public comment.
And I had to go to Saratoga Springs, New York to get my license. And it costs a lot, and it takes time too. I spent $3,000 and then about 6 months before I could so I could take a test here in Vermont, so it takes time.
We appreciate you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay, I don't see anybody online. And then, so we're gonna go into board comment. Anyone has a board comment? Moving right along, we go into new business. So you've got your 3 first reads. I don't know if people have had time to review them. It's just a first read, so we still have a month if not. Anything that you want to go back to the policy committee? Is there anything?
Make a motion.
Well, we can't, it's just the first read, so they had to come back next month, so we'll just pull it next month for a second read. And if you have an opportunity to review them and you do find something, just get in touch with one of the policy members. Okay. So moving on to old business. So it's an update on restructuring, which we kind of got in his superintendent report, but you had something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I did have, it might turn into a question, but really it's a comment. And it's about the process, Lane, that you're describing. And I absolutely do not want to go back to an unproductive, conflicted experience. So don't take it as that is what I'm looking for. And I think by avoiding all conflict, we have potential to miss out on creative ideas and solutions. And so I don't want us to go too far to the right in avoiding all conflict. And then in terms of the idea of only giving the board members the information the night of the board, I can't bring my best self to a discussion if I am given information that night. I tend to have to process out loud. I get anxious. It's really difficult for me. So I would request that perhaps the board be trusted to get the presentation 24 hours in advance, perhaps with some agreements around not sharing anything on social media or whatever it is. But it's really difficult for me to be fully present in a thoughtful way with just getting the information that night. So just knowing myself, it would be much more accessible for me if I could get even 6 or 7 hours in advance. And I'd be open to, agreements around not sharing it, but that would be helpful for me.
So the board can speak with one voice and vote if that is the board's decision, and I would abide by that, wouldn't bother me in the least. You, as a community, and I give you an awful lot of credit, because even when you were struggling with this across the two towns, you still were coming together and trying to have constructive conversations. And it gets really hard when you start to touch on personal values, which I think is what caused a lot of the clashes. And again, outside eyes is things have been productive, they've been quiet, and they've been good so far with the path that we're on.
Yeah.
I am deeply concerned, and again, this is not a criticism, it's a thought process, and people will find that I'm usually just pretty blunt about stuff. I am deeply concerned on 2 pieces. I don't want to see things go back that way, and that's one of the reasons why I'm keeping it a little bit hush-hush. The other concern that I've got is, I want to keep things working forward the way that they are.
Yeah.
And I am fearful of that. I did do my homework in terms of kind of what was going on out in the community and whatnot, and it was not positive or, yeah. So I think it's a lot easier when people come in kind of with fresh eyes, take a look at the information that's there. If there's more questions that come out after that, we can go into our research and come back with it, but I think it's best that way. But again, it's fine. It is fine to me if somebody wants to make a motion, and I will abide. I am your servant. I'll abide by the board.
So I don't know that I'm asking for going back. I don't know that I'm asking for anything other than I would like 24 hours to read the because that is how I can bring my best self. So if we need to make a motion for that, I would make a motion. If people don't agree with that, that's fine. But the conflict piece, I just am worried, and I hear you're worried, and I know that this board and the administration prior to you struggled with a lot of strife around transparency, and I worry that this kind of pendulum swing to the other direction is going to bring us back to a place where people are criticizing us overly around not being transparent and keeping secrets and that kind of thing. And so I wonder if there is a middle ground, and maybe it's not on this topic because this topic has been so difficult, but I just want to express I worry about that because I don't want to be in a secret keeping place or a place where I can't fully engage in the conversations about things with my community.
And the transparency piece, there's going to be a full presentation with slides that we can send out. The presentation will be recorded so that anybody who wants to review it can. So I don't think that's, at least from my perspective, I don't think that's as big a concern. I may be wrong, but I do know, most organizations, people have a report that's due, and that's when people get it. And again, I have deep concerns. I have deep concerns over presenting in front of the board as well and having things fall back to where they were when people have to vote. Because it may be contentious. And so those are my pieces. But again, it does not bother me in the least if people say, yeah, no, we want this.
And in my experience, decision makers get more than that night with the report. They would get the report in advance of making the decision. So I would like to make a motion that we be given the proposal that we're going to be presented with 12 to 24 hours in advance with an agreement that we're not sharing that out publicly. It's for our own consumption so we can make a informed decision.
Will we be making a decision the night of?
That's up to the board. My job is, in my understanding, and people can modify it, was to present the recommendation or recommendations. And the board had reserved the right to vote when and where it thought possible. So, the vote could be no, there could be no vote. It could be, hey, we want more information so that we can really think about it. And these are the questions that we have that we want you to go and research.
think we all want to do a good job collaborating. And I think that we would enjoy a higher level of trust. And 12 hours is not a reasonable amount of time to have that. I'll second your motion.
Is there any discussion about the motion on the floor, which is to release the presentation 12 hours prior to it being presented at our meeting? So it would be Wednesday morning. No, Thursday morning prior to the meeting.
Adrian, did you have a second on that?
Yes, Kate and Steve, sorry. Any discussion on that? Thoughts?
I would really appreciate it. Y'all have seen me when I'm my anxious self and just talking. I'd like to just read it and then be able to think about it.
This would just be released to the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was gonna make, is that, you know, in the past, in past contentious issues, we've had people just leak it, you know? So if the board is going to decide to do this, I would ask that we are going to be doing this with an honor system, that this will not be leaked to the public or to your buddies, or, you know, there won't be online discussion about it, anything like that. Because that will be completely contradictory to what we're trying to achieve, which is some sort of harmonious discussion. So if we want to move forward with that vote, that would be my only request, is that there's like, I don't want to say confidentiality clause, but you will be held to that.
So change the motion, so there is.
I'm sorry?
So change the motion, so there is.
I think I did add that in my motion. In my original motion, it was with I said a lot of words, but I put a lot of time, but I did say.
What I wrote. Ms. Lampier moved to receive the restructuring presentation 12 to 24 hours in advance of the meeting, with the agreement that they won't share it publicly prior to the meeting.
Are you gonna be up at 6 o'clock in the morning to send that?
Oh, yeah. No, I'll have this done as soon as I sit down with Cheryl and make her miserable about the potential costs. The only thing that we're not going to be able to do is be able to predict what the tax rates will be. And the reason being is because we won't get that information from the state until we break the December 1st letter. So.
If we were gonna bring our first draft of the budget, and we won't know this information to add it.
We can come in and we can say, these are the costs, if we had to go out to bond for it. And so that's one of the things that the board will have to consider that night. And is it okay if I say, I don't want to get us off track here. But there's two possible ways of potentially paying for what we're going to recommend. One of them is to go out to bond, right? And so you build into the budget each year what the cost of the payments are going to be. The problem is if we decide that we want to go out to bond, we're going to have to predict, as we're building the budget, what those payments might be. Because my guess is we probably couldn't go out to bond until, after March. Right, because we don't want to have it associated like last time with the actual vote on the budget. The other possibility, and this is where the December 1st letter comes in, is depending upon the overall cost, it might make more sense just to put it in the budget and pay for it in one shot. As long as it doesn't push us over what they call the excess threshold. Because, the closer you get to that excess threshold, the more of other people's money you're using, as long as you don't cross it. And in one shot, if people recognize that, yep, this is a 1-year thing, we're going to pay a little bit more this year to get this done, but it's done and we're done with it. We're not paying extra for the next 30 years or 15 years or 10 years. And so those will be some of the things that we talked about that night. Recognize, and I think this is a good point, and I'm glad that you brought this up. If this were policy governance, the administrative team would be making a decision. Right. So just as you're thinking about policy governance as well, just be thoughtful about it. Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't bother me in the least what you decide. So don't let my feelings, change what you might vote.
Just wondering, some of like the special ed teachers at.
Can I just do like a little point of order? We have a motion on the floor.
Oh, sure.
To address, and we can continue discussion or we can table the motion. What would you like to do?
I would like to continue.
Okay. All right. So the motion on the floor right now is to release the plan for the restructuring recommendation I'd like to be specific, so 12 hours prior to the meeting, so that would be Thursday morning, by 6 a.m. There's no other further discussions. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. All right, Rick,
Nay.
Jeff,
Nay.
Scott, Kate,
Yes.
here, Katie,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Lois,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chuck.
Yes.
So the yeas have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3 nays. All right, so the motion passes. So the presentation will be released Thursday morning. Okay. All right. Move on.
Yeah. When you were talking about budget tiers, it brought to mind the estimate they were putting together for modular buildings. The special education teachers sound like they're really up against the wall. Would you have that for the next meeting? Is that something we could consider as part of the budget?
You'll know 12 hours ahead of time.
Great. Good to know. I'll expect.
I appreciate that. But no, if you were interested in what that was, I think as Todd said, that those numbers were calculated a while back. I don't know how long ago, but you reach right out to Todd and say, hey, what were they?
Right.
Yeah, which would be good that way. Yeah.
All right. Is there any other discussion about the reconstruction process that we are now moving to? Okay. All right. And then old business, I had a discussion about a vote to adopt policy governance. I've talked to Lane, I've talked to Jean, I've talked to numerous people about it on and off over the last couple of months. Again, just trying to get a feel of where people are at. We don't have to vote to adopt it today, but I kind of we're starting to incur costs for the online education and, I just kind of want to get a better sense of, are we still on board with this? I thought, kind of at the retreat, people were pretty positive about it. Are we still in that place? I just don't want to be spinning wheels and spending money for no good reason. Are we still in a decent place?
I personally feel pretty positive about it. Everything I've heard just makes sense in my brain, but I would like the time to go through the online training just so
That's
I really understand what's.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't at the, I was in Hawaii, so I didn't get much.
No, that's fine. No, I'm happy to delay the vote to adopt. I just, what I didn't want to do is just kind of belabor this and incur this cost. And if people were like, either neutral or, not wanting it and we, waste money. So, all right. So, you're going to have information about that out. Can we set a deadline for homework?
It's about 8 to 10 hours to work your way through all the projects.
So when do you think we could accomplish this?
Probably late December.
Would it be reasonable to say we could do it before the November board meeting?
Yeah.
I could get it done
Yeah.
before the November board meeting,
Yeah.
if I get the email from
From what I've heard, it's not heavy lifting. It's, it goes along. So, okay. So those will go out and you guys will shoot to complete it by November board meeting. Okay. All right. All right. If there's no more about that, we can move on. All right. Future agenda items.
Am I able to, can I
Yeah.
comment on this?
Maybe.
Okay, so, I just want to make sure that, the board, when we get into budget season, that we don't lose fact that our buildings still need, all three of them still need some major upgrades. If they're not going away, they're getting, I'm not gonna say they're deteriorating, but they're not getting any better, right? We're working on them the best we can. I do want to give you a little input that I think is working. Our counterparts at LMH are talking about some smaller projects, $2 to $3 million projects, either going into their budget, like Lane said, and putting it in and voting with it. They're having these conversations. So we're talking about future agenda items. I feel we as a board, as a group, need to be cognizant of that and start talking about this, what we're gonna do. Are we gonna replace one of the boilers here? Are we gonna think about replacing the boilers? Years ago, seems like a long time ago, we were very concerned about the underground oil tank at Cavendish. And we haven't spoken one word about that in a couple of years. There's been some other things going on. COVID happened and we kind of just went to the wayside, but that tank's still there. The boiler's there. I mean, the same age kind of as ours here, that they're just not as efficient as they could be. So I think we should have that conversation now before we start talking about budgets, about what we're gonna do. Although Mount Holly is very adamant that they're gonna try to do something, you know, so a couple, 2, 3 major projects, not huge. They're being very understanding of their taxpayers and, you know, looking at some different avenues. So I think, I'm not saying we should do exactly what they're doing, but it's not a terrible idea that we at least open conversations up.
And okay. The piece is that if it's critical work that needs to be done in the Ludlow Mount Holly, those are pretty critical right now. I think in a good way, the people are starting to realize that it's just going to get more expensive the longer we wait. And then if you have a critical failure, it gets more expensive exponentially, yeah, really fast. So it's worth taking a look at, you know, what's most critical and potentially trying to.
It's also the fear of, as a taxpayer or whatever, you know, the state's gonna make a decision on, are we gonna consolidate schools, or are we gonna shut schools down?
Yeah.
So do you wanna dump a bunch of money into a school that's gonna get shut down in a year or two? I mean, that's the big fear that nobody talks about.
I think, and again, I can't predict 100%. The consolidation of schools, that people think back to Act 46 when they were forcing the boards together in the districts, wasn't pretty. And the legislators are the one that have to make the decision. If it's going to be ugly, they may shy away. But the problem is right now is, right, if you put the decisions about consolidating in one pan of the scale and people's taxes in the other, you know, where are those relative to each other? They're probably about here. People would be really upset about consolidation, and taxes are upsetting, but not as much as this. The second they balance out or do this, then the legislators will be quite happy to make that decision. And so it's worth kind of watching politically what happens over this legislative session in the next year or so.
Which is when we should get our legislative committee going again.
And I 100% agree with you, Scott. I'm a taxpayer as well. But when we keep throwing bad money at bad money, it's not good. Like this boiler, we keep dumping money into this boiler, or if we, God forbid, knock on wood, something happened to one of Cavendish's boilers, they're old as well. We have to put money into it. We can think, okay, what happens if there is consolidation and there's, you know, something happens and we lose some schools? But if it happens over a 4-year period, it's not gonna happen overnight. We're still gonna spend money on keeping our schools operating. So I think it's a fine line. That's why I think if we look at some smaller projects, when we mean smaller, obviously $3 million is a lot of money, but it's not 16 or 20. To keep things, operating and actually making improvements, that if there isn't consolidation, we can move on and we're not wasting that money, right? Just a small example, what if we rebuilt the boiler room here at the high school? That would not affect if we, 5 years down the road, everybody here's gone, 10 years down the road, we're all gone. Somebody said, oh, that was a good move. They did the boiler room. Now we can continue on with upgrading the HVAC system or whatever. Seeing that either one at Cavendish, and I'm not talking about Chester Andover because that school's in really good shape. Right? We've, had a lot of money put into it, not by choice, a couple of them.
I think that's an excellent idea that we start talking about it. I guess I have a request that it's not in the Morpheus conversation. I would request that there's some level of organization to needs, wants, cost, I mean, we can if and or but forever, but if that could be brought in that form of some sort, I think it would just make it a lot easier.
So I'm gonna,
those discussions.
and I'm perfectly okay with that because a lot of that's already done.
Yeah, I
Right,
know.
we've already done a lot of that, but what would be my suggestion, Lane and I have talked about this, that instead of a grocery list where nobody can agree on, I may talk with Lane, I may walk in and say, this is what we think we should do. Here it is, yes or no? Do you want to do this or you don't? That's what you're trusting us to do our job and tell you what we think is best for our school district. And I believe that would go, it'd be something easier to sell to everybody.
Policy governance.
Well, policy governance so this is another good kind of example. You could develop the policy to say what the priorities are. Right? Priority is that we expect you to work on what's most critical and what's going to give us the most efficiency savings, right? So like the boiler that Todd's talking about is 50 years old. When I did a little bit of internet research, it said, oh, if it's a 50-year-old boiler, if you put a new one in, you're going to get a 35% efficiency improvement, overnight, if not more. And at that cost, at that rate, it might actually pay for itself, right? Just in terms of what we're saving in energy costs. And so there's that piece to it as well. But those would be the two things that I would recommend and add in if there's other. But what's critical that if it fails, everything comes to a stop. Those have to be fixed. And then anything where we're actually potentially going to make money or save money, those would be probably where we'd start.
Well, if it fails, it's worse than just having to fix it immediately. It's what to do with the kids at the time that the boiler is not working.
And then how do we find the money in the middle of not having the money?
Would it be, I'm sorry. Would it be too big of an ask for when you give us that kind of like critical need, that sort of thing, to also give us some sort of like financial, like this would be our estimated cost, this would be an estimated savings, or, or it would pay for itself in X amount of time? Is that too big of an ask?
No, because that's what, if whoever, and I want to be very careful when I say this, whoever, if we hire another engineering firm or we stay with EEI, it's one phone call. I need to know how much this would be, and they're gonna give us a budgetary number, not an install number, right? We have to be careful that it's gonna be a budgetary number, because the number today may be 20% less than what it'd be after, by the time we decide that that's what we want to do, maybe 20% more, right? Just
Okay, so would we, as a board, like to have that kind of built-in discussion? We can just, where we've got budget discussion sort of built in. I was hoping for education, but we really just never got there. Just have a monthly discussion there. Would that work for the three of you?
Yeah, I think we could probably just do a report at the next meeting and say this is what we recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that under TRC Facilities Director report?
For the
Or
TRC,
financial?
agreement?
I'm sorry, well, the Facilities Director report. Do you want it under your report or do you want it under financial update? I just want to make sure we're putting it in the appropriate place for if there's discussion, that's all.
Doesn't
really matter.
We'll report it to you. How about that? We'll get it to you.
I just
one-
put
one
it under
round.
facilities.
Facilities.
We can all
okay.
talk, yeah.
All right, sounds good, all right.
Can I just add, while you say you don't want to put money into buildings that they may shut down, we still own those buildings. And so you would want to maintain them. So if we needed to, we could sell them and still get money for them. They wouldn't be so dilapidated.
You also you're a fiduciary. That is a public asset. And so part of our responsibility is protecting that asset. And so that's one of the other reasons to keep them in good shape.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on that? Any other future agenda items?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are in our last public comment session. No? Making sure we didn't ignore you.
No.
All right, so that brings us to our next meeting date, which will be November 21st, here at 6 p.m. Homework will be due.
Homework.
You have to write a report.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
That'll move, Steve.
All right.
If you talk.
If you can